we're going to take a look at the top buttons on the camera right above the main LCD. This is where a lot of the action happens on the camera, so let's learn what these are and how to control them. Now, as soon as we turn the camera on and hit the shutter button halfway, you're going to see the information come up on the LCD screen. The buttons I'm talking about are right here, and realize that they have two functions each. We have, on the first one, the metering mode and the white balance. Again, AF and drive, and the ISO control and exposure compensation. Well, we control one of these two things by using the two different command dials, the one on the back, the big rotating dial here, or the front one right next to the shutter. And so as we push the first button here and go between our metering modes, we're going to see that that back dial switches, in this case, the white balance, and the front control dial switches your metering modes. So right now, let's talk about what these are. We went through white balance completely, and remember, if you don't touch it for a while, it's going to go back to your standard display. So if we don't touch anything for a while, it's just going to revert back in about 10 seconds. We've gone through all the settings on white balance already, but here they are. You can do them from your menu, or you can quickly access them from using these buttons on top. Now this, though, the metering, is controlled right up here. Of course, you can do that with a menu too, but if we go ahead and do it from here, we have this full evaluative metering. This is where you're going to stay most of the time. Camera's very intelligent, and it's probably going to meter correctly using this mode. But if you want to go ahead and bring it down here, then you can go to the next selection, which is your partial metering, and this takes the center part of the image. See, it went back to the standard display because I didn't do anything. It takes the standard center of the image and uses that to calculate how to expose the exposure. And why would you use this? Well, if you're partially backlit, you're taking a picture of a large group of people and it's just a slight bit backlit, they're not quite as bright as you'd want, you might want to use the partial metering here and center it on some of the faces, and that'll bring up the brightness of the faces. The background might be a hair overexposed, but you don't care, you want those faces. So again, I'm going to go ahead and press this button here, the other one, and go ahead and adjust to the next setting, which is spot. And this means that it's going to really just meter right on the very center of the image. And that means that if you're tremendously backlit, you're going to want to put that on the faces of people and keep them exposed correctly. The back may be completely overexposed, but you don't care. So if you're very concerned with exactly just this one little spot in the image, you can go ahead and have it meter on the very center of the image like that, and you'll be sure to get a correct exposure. And then you can go to the last one here where nothing's exposed, and that's a center-weighted average metering. And what that does is it considers the center of the image, but it also considers stuff around the periphery. And it's sort of a hybrid between the two. So you can experiment, of course, it's user preference, but in certain type of shooting situations, you're going to want to experiment with that. So again, we go up to the top here, and that evaluative right here is where you're going to want to stay most all of the time. Really does a great job. Let's press the next one over here and go to autofocus and drive. Again, we're going to use the two different, I have my hand on both the controls here. The rotating controller in the back is going to change your shooting mode from single shot to continuous, where you've got that really fast bursting action. And of course, it's almost 4 frames a second in this camera, about 3.9. And then we move over to the other two, which are modifications of each other. This is self-timer mode, and it allows you to go ahead and get in front of the image, or you can have it reduced to only 2 seconds waiting time with your second selection there. So again, standard shooting will be single image, of course. And then let's go ahead and adjust our front controller here. And this does our autofocus type. Now, one shot's where you press the shutter halfway down, it locks focus, and it stays locked while you hold that shutter down. That's going to be a traditional shooting mode, where I shoot most of the time. But then you have two others, AI focus and AI servo. Now, AI focus is where it locks focus, but if something starts moving, it'll track what it locked focus on and continue to focus to the moment of exposure. Now, that would be if you're taking pictures in a group and you have people milling around and stuff, and you've taken the picture, you've locked on the person that you're interested in and composed, but that person is sort of milling around and talking to other people, and it locks the focus on them, and it won't really stop trying to do that until the moment of exposure. So it's very intelligent. Now, what's the third one? AI servo. This actually means you'll be in the one-shot mode unless somebody moves. The other one, it continuously tries to focus, and of course it's using a little bit of the batteries while it's doing that. You're trying to conserve power. AI Suro is a hybrid where it's in the first mode, one shot, unless somebody moves, and then it locks and stays continuously focusing into the moment of exposure. So a hybrid of the two. Let's go to 3, third button. And we have two things. I'll start with the back rotating controller. This is, first off, your flash compensation. And that allows you to bias the amount of light coming out of the flash. And what that's going to do is change the ratio of brightness between your foreground and background, because your foreground is going to be primarily lit by your flash and your background might be sort of ambient lighting plus a little bit of flash. So if you bump up your flash a little bit in the front by giving you a little extra flash, that's going to go ahead and bring the brightness up in the front, but the background's going to get darker. And here's vice versa. You bring it down and you're going to land up, the background's going to look brighter compared to the foreground. It's still going to expose correctly. Now also the main use of this is if you take your top-mounted flash and you're bouncing the flash off the ceiling, a real pro technique, or you're using an index card taped to the back of the flash with the flash pointing straight up, you're going to need to add a little bit of flash because of course you're losing light bouncing it off of a low white ceiling onto the subjects, or if you're just bouncing with a card. So you'll need probably +1 stop if you're doing a low ceiling bounce or an index card bounce, and sometimes I've had to go as high as 2. Remember though that once you leave this in here, you're going to see this little symbol in the display and all of your photos are going to have extra flash, so be careful there. And of course, if we don't touch it, bam, it'll go back to the regular display. So ISO is the last thing you control here with the front controller. It allows you to go all the way from the automatic setting, letting the camera decide, all the way up to the top. Remember, in the mid-ranges over here is where you're going to do most of your average day shooting, 500, 640, something like that. Camera produces very nice low noise images at that ISO setting and sensitivity. Last button over here, mention, is the LCD backlight. So if you're shooting at night, it brings a nice little amber onto it over there. And there you go. So there's all of our quick access stuff right on the top of the camera, right above the LCD.